My father said I was only good for cleaning sewers, but fate had other plans. Growing up, I always knew where I stood in my family. Dead last. My parents had a clear favorite, and it wasn't me. My younger sister, Jenny, was the golden child. She could do no wrong. Every little thing she did was met with applause, while I could break my back trying, and it still wouldn't be good enough. When she learned to walk, they acted like she'd won an Olympic medal. When I got straight A's in middle school, my dad barely looked up from his newspaper. When she joined the cheerleading squad, they threw a huge celebration. When I made varsity football, I got a nod. Maybe. Jenny got ballet lessons, summer camps, designer clothes. I got hand-me-downs and a whole lot of, why can't you be more like your sister? I figured things might change when I got older, but I was wrong. High school only made it worse. My parents paid for Jenny's private tutoring, her prom dress, her weekend trips with friends. Meanwhile, I was bagging groceries after school just to have some spending money. I once asked my mom for a little help covering a school trip. She laughed and said, "Life isn't free, Alex. If you want something, work for it." But when Jenny wanted to go to Florida with her friends for spring break, they handed her their credit card without a second thought. At this point, I started keeping a mental list of all the times I got screwed over. Like the time my dad called me lazy because I slept in on a Saturday after pulling a double shift at the gas station. Or when my mom told me college was a waste of money for someone like me, but then bragged about Jenny getting into a top university that they were paying for, of course. They never outright said it, but I knew what they thought of me. I was a nobody, just some extra baggage in their perfect little family. The real slap in the face came on Jenny's 16th birthday. I knew they were getting her something big. She'd been dropping hints for months, and my parents were all smiles about it. Sure enough, they let her outside that morning, blindfolded her, and there it was, a brand new shiny blue Jeep parked in the driveway with a big red bow. Jenny squealed, ran to hug them, and immediately started posting pictures. "You deserve it, sweetheart," my mom gushed. I stood there, watching, feeling like an idiot for even thinking I mattered. They hadn't even acknowledged my birthday that year. No cake, no gift, not even a card. And when I turned 18, I braced myself for some kind of recognition. Maybe not a car, but something. Instead, I came home to a single envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was a cheap scratch-off lottery ticket. I stared at it, thinking it had to be a joke. But my dad just smirked and said, "Let's see if you get lucky for once." Jenny burst out laughing. My mom chuckled too. And that was it. That was their gift to me. A damn lottery ticket. I don't even remember what I said. Probably nothing. I just stood there, gripping that stupid piece of paper, listening to them joke about how I might finally strike it rich. I walked to my room, shut the door, and for the first time in my life, I let the anger win. It burned through me, hotter than anything I'd ever felt before. I thought about all the years I spent trying to impress them, trying to make them proud. For what? So they could treat me like an afterthought? Like a joke? I didn't even bother scratching the ticket. I knew my luck. That night, I made a decision. I was done. Done waiting for them to see me. Done hoping they'd wake up one day and finally give a damn. If I stayed, I'd rot in that house, in their shadow. Forever. I packed a bag, just a few clothes, some cash I'd been saving, and the last bit of dignity I had left. As I walked past the living room, my dad looked up from the TV, smirking. "You'll be back," he said. "You got nowhere else to go." Jenny didn't even look up from her phone. My mom just waved me off like I was some annoying neighbor kid trying to sell cookies. I didn't say a word. I just walked out the door. I heard them laughing as it closed behind me. It was cold that night. Not just the air, but the kind of cold that settled deep in your bones when you realized you had no safety net. I stood on the porch for a second, staring at the quiet suburban street. The neighbors were inside, their houses glowing with the kind of warmth I'd never had. I could hear the faint sound of a sitcom playing through someone's window, the distant hum of a lawnmower down the block, the occasional car rolling by. Normal life, happening all around me. And there I was, standing outside my own house like a stranger. I tightened my grip on my bag and stepped off the porch. I had no plan, no destination, just a burning certainty that I couldn't stay. I walked past Jenny's new Jeep, shiny under the porch lights, looking like everything I never had. It wasn't just about the car. It was about what it represented. She was the one they invested in. I was the one they discarded. I kept walking, past the cul-de-sac, past the rows of perfect houses with perfect families inside. My stomach growled, and I realized I hadn't even eaten dinner. Didn't matter. Food was the least of my problems. I pulled out my phone and stared at the screen. No messages, no missed calls. Not that I expected any. I opened up my bank app. $234. That was my entire net worth. Enough for a couple nights at a cheap motel. Maybe some gas if I found somewhere to crash. After that, who knew? The only thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't turning back. Not now. Not ever. Renting my first place was exactly the dream I'd hoped for. It was more like a glorified storage unit with a sink. The walls were so thin I could hear my neighbor sneeze. The kitchen was barely big enough to turn around in the bathroom. Let's just say I'd seen nicer setups at gas stations. But it was mine, and for the first time, I wasn't under my parents' roof. That feeling lasted about 3 minutes, right until I checked my bank account. Rent was due in 2 weeks, and after buying some basic groceries, ramen, eggs, and the cheapest peanut butter I could find, I was already in trouble. I needed money fast. And fast money didn't come easy when you had no experience and no degree. The next few weeks were a crash course in doing whatever it took to survive. I started out at a warehouse, hauling boxes for minimum wage. My back ached, my hands were raw, and my feet throbbed by the time I got home. But at least I could pay for electricity. Then I picked up night shifts cleaning offices. Corporate guys in suits would walk past me like I was invisible, stepping over the trash I had to pick up. And some even left half-eaten food on desks like I was their personal maid. Then I got lucky, if you could call it that. One of the guys at the warehouse mentioned a crew that needed extra hands for construction. It was nasty work, mostly laying sewer lines. The pay was a little better, but the conditions? Brutal. Digging trenches in the sun for 10 hours straight, covered in sweat, dirt, and things I didn't want to think about. The first day nearly killed me. The foreman handed me a shovel, pointed at the ground, and said, "Start digging." That was it. No training, no instructions. Just me, a hole, and the worst smell I'd ever encountered. By the end of the shift, my hands were blistered, my arms felt like noodles, and I was questioning every life choice that led me there. But I came back the next day. And the next, because as awful as it was, at least I wasn't depending on my parents. I fell into a routine. Wake up sore, work until I felt half dead, come home, eat something cheap, and collapse onto my futon. I told myself it was temporary, that eventually I'd figure something out, but eventually felt like a distant dream. Then came the day I saw Jenny. It was just another miserable afternoon, the sun baking the back of my neck as I shoveled through rock-hard dirt. The crew was laying a new sewer line near a shopping plaza, one of those places filled with overpriced boutiques, organic juice bars, and people who had never worked a day of hard labor in their lives. I was ankle-deep in a trench, covered in sweat and grime, when I heard the unmistakable sound of bass-heavy music blasting from a car. I looked up just in time to see a bright blue Jeep slow down, rolling past like it owned the street. Jenny. She was in the driver's seat, her perfectly manicured hand wrapped around a fancy iced coffee. Her friends were in the passenger seats, laughing at something, oblivious to the world around them. Then she saw me. For a second, I thought maybe she'd ignore me, pretend she didn't know the guy covered in dirt. But then her face lit up, not with surprise, not with concern, but with something else. Amusement. She pulled over. Her friends leaned forward. Curious. Jenny held up her phone, pointing it right at me. "Oh my gosh, guys, look. It's my brother. Finally found his true calling. Cleaning up after people." Laughter erupted from the Jeep. I could hear it over the roar of traffic, over the hum of the machinery behind me. Jenny zoomed in, getting a nice, close-up shot of me standing in a ditch, shovel in hand, sweat dripping down my face. Then, just like that, she hit post. I didn't have to check my phone to know where that video was going. Facebook. Instagram, maybe even TikTok. My brother finally found his calling. I stood there, gripping my shovel, feeling the weight of every humiliation, every moment of being overlooked, every time I'd been treated like a joke. And now I wasn't just a joke in my own family. I was a joke to the whole world. And that was something I wasn't going to forget. Getting humiliated by Jenny in front of the entire internet should have been the worst part of my week, but life had other plans. Work didn't stop just because I was the newest viral joke. I still had rent to pay, food to buy, and a body to exhaust before I could crash on my futon every night. So when the boss sent us out to a job in the middle of nowhere, I didn't even complain. At least there'd be no Wi-Fi. Maybe a break from the world laughing at me. The place we were sent to was one of those old houses you see in horror movies. Peeling paint, sagging roof, a front porch that looked like it hadn't seen a human foot in years. The kind of place that had probably been beautiful once, but was now just an eyesore waiting for someone rich enough to fix it up. The story was that some big-shot developer bought it dirt cheap and wanted to flip it. But before they could start, they needed working plumbing. That's where we came in. A house that old didn't have proper sewage lines. So we were digging up the yard to connect it to the town system. Simple job, but the setting? Not so much. The guys on the crew started in with the jokes before we even parked. Bet this place is haunted. Nah, man, haunted houses have ghosts. This place just has termites. Same thing. One ruins your house. The other ruins your life. I didn't care if the place was haunted or not. What I did care about was the fact that we had to dig in what used to be a front lawn, but now looked more like a jungle. Waist-high grass, rocks, roots. Basically, a nightmare for anyone holding a shovel. By midday, we were drenched in sweat, swearing at the ground, and seriously reconsidering our life choices. The house loomed behind us, all dark windows and warped wood, like it was watching. I wasn't the only one who noticed. "I don't like this place," one of the guys muttered during lunch. "It's too quiet." And it was. No birds, no wind rustling through trees. Just the occasional creak from the house, like it was shifting in its sleep. But hey, I wasn't paid to worry about that. I was paid to dig. The day dragged on. The sun baked us alive. Our muscles ached, and every scoop of dirt felt heavier than the last. By the time we finally finished laying the pipe, it was well past quitting time. Everyone was packing up, tossing tools into the truck, eager to get the hell out of there. Everyone except me. Because I was the new guy, I got stuck with cleanup duty. That meant scrubbing down the tools, coiling up hoses, making sure everything was in order while the rest of the crew leaned against the truck, cracking open sodas and talking about their weekend plans. I stood there, covered in dirt, sweat trickling down my back, watching them laugh like they hadn't just spent the whole day suffering. Typical. Grumbling under my breath, I grabbed a bucket and started scrubbing mud off the shovels. The sun had dipped below the trees, leaving long shadows stretching across the yard. The house looked different in the dim light, more alive, somehow, like it was breathing. I shook off the feeling and kept working. A noise came from inside the house. A creak. I froze, my grip tightening on the handle of the brush. Probably just the house settling. Old places like this always made noise, right? Another creak. Closer this time. I swallowed hard, glancing at the truck. The guys were too busy talking to notice me, let alone the sound. "It's nothing," I muttered under my breath. "Just an old house." I bent down, scrubbing harder, trying to focus on the dirt instead of the weird feeling creeping up my spine. I was just about done with cleanup when I noticed something stuck to one of the shovels. At first, I thought it was just more dried mud, but when I scraped at it with my fingernail, something metallic glinted through the dirt. Curious, I grabbed a rag and rubbed at the spot. A small, round coin peeked out from beneath the grime. It was old, real old. The edges were worn down and the surface was covered in faint, unfamiliar markings. It wasn't one of those rusty pennies you find buried in a sidewalk crack. This thing had weight. I held it up to the last sliver of evening light, turning it over in my fingers. Maybe it was just an old token or some kind of commemorative coin, but something about it felt different, like it had been sitting in that dirt for a long time, waiting to be found. I wasn't much of a history guy, so I had no idea if it was worth anything. But I figured, hey, free souvenir. I wiped it off as best I could, shoved it in my pocket, and forgot about it. By the time I got home, my back was screaming, my hands felt like sandpaper, and I smelled like I'd rolled around in a swamp. The apartment was its usual depressing self, dim, cluttered, and just slightly less inviting than a bus station bathroom. I kicked off my boots, tossed a coin in a junk drawer with a bunch of other random stuff, and collapsed onto my futon. I should have just passed out. But instead, I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to my upstairs neighbor stomp around like he was hosting a wrestling match in his living room. The fridge hummed in the background, and somewhere outside, a car alarm was going off for the third time that night. I thought about the coin, not in some mystical, fate-driven way, just in a, wonder if it's actually worth something way. But looking it up would take effort, and right now, I had about as much energy as a dead battery. Besides, if it was valuable, my luck would probably turn it into a counterfeit piece of junk worth about 2 cents. With a groan, I reached for my phone, mostly out of habit. I was expecting the usual. Some emails I'd ignore, a couple of junk notifications. Instead, I saw a text from a name I hadn't seen in a long time. Dad. For a second, I just stared at the screen. My parents never called me. Not for birthdays, not for holidays, nothing. If my dad was texting, it wasn't because he missed me. I opened the message. Your mom, and I heard you finally found your calling. Congrats. Since you're so good with sewers now, how about you swing by? Our toilet's clogged. I blinked at the screen, rereading it just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. Nope, he actually said that. I could practically hear the smirk in his words, like he was sitting back in his recliner, laughing to himself while my mom nodded along. Jenny probably showed them the video, and they'd had themselves a nice little family joke about it. My fingers tightened around my phone. My whole body tensed up, that same familiar frustration creeping in. I shouldn't have been surprised. This was classic them, turning everything into a punchline at my expense. I thought about all the times they dismissed me, all the times Jenny got everything while I got nothing, the way they never took me seriously, how they always assumed I'd be the one to fail, to come crawling back, proving them right. The worst part? For a long time, I believed them. I thought maybe I was a problem. Maybe I wasn't good enough, smart enough, deserving enough. Not anymore. I stare at the text, debating whether to ignore it, block his number, or throw my phone across the room. But instead, I typed out a response before I could stop myself. I'd rather deal with sewers than deal with you. And I hit send. The moment the message disappeared, a weird kind of calm settled over me. Like I'd just let go of a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying. I tossed my phone onto the table and leaned back, exhaling. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a joke. I felt like I'd finally said what I should have years ago. Lunchtime on the job site was usually the best part of the day. Not because the food was any good. I was still surviving on gas station sandwiches and whatever chips were on sale, but because it was the only time we weren't breaking our backs in the dirt. It was 30 minutes of sitting in the shade, trading stories, and complaining about work. That day, one of the guys, Mitch, an older dude who'd been doing this kind of work forever, started talking about the weirdest things people had found buried underground. Old bottles, rusted tools, even a wedding ring once. Then he mentioned a guy he knew who found an old coin and sold it for $100. That got my attention. I sat there, chewing on a stale granola bar, thinking about the coin I'd tossed into my junk drawer weeks ago. It wasn't like I expected it to be worth much. But $100? That was groceries for a month if I shopped smart. Or at least enough to take a break from ramen and treat myself to something that didn't come in a styrofoam cup. By the time I got home that night, I couldn't shake the thought. I went straight to the drawer, rummaging through the mess. Spare keys, old batteries, random receipts I never threw away until my fingers brushed against cold metal. There it was, still covered in dried mud, still as unremarkable as the day I found it. I grabbed an old toothbrush, ran some water over the coin, and started scrubbing. The more dirt I removed, the more details came through. The surface had faint, worn-down markings, but I could make out a face. A woman, her hair flowing behind her like she was caught in the wind. The other side had an eagle, its wings spread wide. It looked old, really old. Curious, I dried it off, pulled out my phone, and started searching. At first, nothing. Just a bunch of generic coin collector websites selling old pennies and commemorative quarters. I scrolled through listings, flipping between tabs, about to give up when I saw something that made my stomach drop. An image, the same face, the same flowing hair, the same eagle. Flowing hair silver dollar, $17.94. I clicked the link, my fingers suddenly shaky. The page loaded, and there it was, a description, a brief history lesson about early American currency, and then $7,750,000. I stared at the number, my brain refusing to process it. $7 million. That had to be a typo. Or a scam. There was no way the filthy piece of metal I found buried in a ditch was worth that kind of money. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I scrolled down, reading everything I could. Turns out, the $17.94 flowing hair silver dollar was one of the rarest coins in existence. Only a few survived, and collectors would pay insane amounts to get their hands on one. I looked at my coin again, comparing it to the images online. Every tiny scratch, every worn-down edge, it all matched. My breathing turned shallow. I picked up my phone, about to call someone who, I had no idea. A bank? A pawn shop? The president? Instead, I just sat there, gripping the coin, my mind racing in 1,000 directions. I needed to get it authenticated. I needed to make sure this wasn't some elaborate prank. But even if it was real, what the hell was I supposed to do with it? Walk into a bank and say, "Hey, I'd like to cash in this ancient $7 million coin, please?" I wasn't sure how long I sat there, just staring at it. An hour? 2? The room around me felt different, like I'd slipped into some alternate reality where things like this actually happened. At one point, I got up and locked the door. Then I checked the window. Then I checked it again. My brain was spiraling. What if someone knew I had it? What if I got robbed? Did people get kidnapped over stuff like this? Was I about to become one of those weird true crime stories? I wasn't sleeping that night. Not a chance. I sat back down on the futon, gripping the coin like it might disappear. My eyes darted between the coin and my phone screen, my pulse still hammering in my chest. If this was real, if I wasn't losing my mind, my entire life had just changed. But I had no idea what to do next. The next morning, I woke up feeling like I hadn't slept at all. Probably because I hadn't. The coin was still clutched in my hand like I was guarding some ancient treasure. Because, well, reality hit me fast. I couldn't just show up to work, digging ditches like nothing happened. My life had changed overnight, and if I didn't handle it right, I could mess up the only good thing that had ever landed in my lap. I grabbed my phone, stared at my boss's number, and took a deep breath. Calling in sick wasn't exactly my style, but I couldn't risk leaving the coin in my apartment or hauling it around in my pocket, like a lucky charm. When my boss answered, I croaked out the best sick voice I could manage. Something about food poisoning. Couldn't keep anything down. Really bad timing, but I'd be useless on site anyway. He groaned, told me to drink some ginger ale and don't die, then hung up. Step 1 by time. Done. Step 2. Figure out what to do with $7 million worth of history sitting in my palm. I needed to get the coin somewhere safe. The idea of stuffing it in my sock drawer and hoping for the best wasn't cutting it. If I lost it, damaged it, or worse, someone found out about it, I was done. I did a quick search for bank safety deposit boxes and found a branch nearby that had them available. Within an hour, I was standing in front of a banker, trying not to look like some guy hiding stolen loot. Renting a box was easier than I thought. A few forms, a small fee, and they handed me a key like I was some kind of secret agent. When I placed the coin inside and locked the box, I finally exhaled. It was safe. For now. But safety wasn't enough. I needed a plan. The next step was figuring out how the hell you sell something like this. I wasn't about to post it on some sketchy auction site and hope for the best. I needed professionals. Real experts. After some digging, I found a legitimate rare coin auction house. One of those places where people in suits bid on things most of us would never think twice about. Their website had a whole process laid out: authentication, appraisal, and then the auction itself. The tricky part? Getting the coin authenticated without drawing attention to myself. I didn't want some collector hearing about it and trying to lowball me out of desperation, or worse, some scammer trying to take advantage of my inexperience. I reached out to the auction house, following their process to the letter, sent photos, filled out forms, and waited for a response. 2 days later, I got an email. "We would be happy to authenticate your item. Please bring it in for a private evaluation." I swear my heart stopped for a second. This was happening. I took a deep breath, went to the bank, retrieved the coin, and made my way to their office. The place was exactly what I expected. High ceilings, fancy furniture, the kind of place where people talked in hushed tones and nodded seriously instead of actually smiling. A guy in a tailored suit led me to a private room, where an older gentleman with magnifying glasses and gloves sat waiting. I handed over the coin, and he studied it like he was looking at the Mona Lisa. The silence was unbearable. He turned it over, examined the details, checked it under different lights. Then, after what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. "It's authentic. A rare 1794 flowing hair silver dollar. This is a truly remarkable find." I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. It was real. It was actually real. He explained the next steps, how they would officially catalog it, document its condition, and prepare for auction. They estimated it could sell for somewhere around $7 to $8 million, depending on the bidders. $7 million. I signed a contract giving them exclusive rights to auction it. It felt surreal, like I was signing my name onto a completely different life. The auction date was set, and all I could do was wait. Waiting was torture. Every night, I laid awake thinking about what could go wrong. What if no one bid? What if some billionaire decided it wasn't worth the money? What if I somehow got scammed? I must have Googled what to do when you randomly find a multi-million-dollar coin at least 50 times. The day of the auction, I sat at home, refreshing the live feed like a maniac. The bidding started at $4 million. Within minutes, it climbed past 6, then 7. Final price, $7,500,000. I stared at the screen, numb. That number didn't even seem real. But it was. And it was mine. After taxes, auction fees, and other deductions, I was looking at a final payout of around $5 million. Still more money than I had ever dreamed of. And just like that, my life would never be the same. The moment the money hit my account, I just sat there staring at the screen. $5,185,000. $5 million. That extra $185,000? A few months ago, that would have been a number so big I couldn't even wrap my head around it. Now it was just a little extra. Funny how fast your perspective shifts when you go from counting quarters for gas money to having more wealth than anyone in your family ever had. I had no plans to go on some reckless spending spree. No sports cars, no mansions, no blowing through cash like I was some lottery winner who didn't know taxes were a thing. I wasn't an idiot. If life had taught me anything, it was that money disappears fast when you don't respect it. First order of business? Keeping my mouth shut. No one needed to know. The last thing I wanted was people suddenly remembering I existed because I had a few zeros in my bank account. I started small. The apartment had to go. My current place felt more like a glorified storage unit than a home. I found a solid 2-bedroom in a good neighborhood. Nothing flashy, just comfortable. Something where I didn't have to listen to my upstairs neighbor dragging furniture at 3 a.m. or my old landlord pretending a clog sink was a tenant responsibility. Next, the truck. I'd been driving a rusted-out beater for years, held together by duct tape and sheer willpower. It was time for an upgrade. Nothing too crazy. I wasn't trying to be that guy who suddenly pulls up in Ferrari and acts like he's always been rich. I bought a brand new Ford F-150, fully loaded but not obnoxious, practical, reliable, American-made. And let me tell you, there was no better feeling than driving it off the lot knowing it was completely paid for. No monthly payments. No worrying if the transmission was going to drop out on the freeway. Just me, my new truck, and the open road. The hardest part was figuring out what to do next. $5 million wasn't never work again money, but it was never stress about bills again money if I played it right. I wasn't about to sit around doing nothing. I needed a plan. Maybe start my own business. Maybe invest in something smart. But I wasn't going to rush into anything. For the first time in my life, I had options, and I was going to take my time figuring out the best move. But of course, my family had other ideas. I had done a pretty good job keeping things quiet. But somehow, Jenny still found ways to be the worst. Even with me minding my business, she kept running her mouth online. More funny posts, more jokes about me being a failure, a nobody. She posted some old video of me working in the trenches, captioned, "At least he's consistent." Real original. And my parents? Well, nothing had changed there. They still didn't know about the money. Not that it mattered. In their minds, I was still the disappointment, the one who never measured up. A cousin I hadn't heard from in years sent me a text out of nowhere. "Man, your dad was talking about you at Aunt Linda's thing. Said he always knew you wouldn't amount to much." That stung. But instead of making me angry, it just confirmed what I already knew. No matter what I did, they would never see me as anything more than what they had decided I was years ago. And honestly, that was fine, because I didn't need their approval anymore. I had something way better, a future, and this time I was the one writing the story. It was bound to happen sooner or later. Secrets don't stay secrets forever, especially when people love to talk. For weeks, I've been keeping my life low-key. No flashy social media posts, no sudden lifestyle changes that would raise eyebrows. But people notice things. A new truck, a better neighborhood. Running into old acquaintances who knew me when I was broke. Little details that start adding up. Jenny was the last person I wanted to know. But of course, someone put the pieces together for her. Maybe a friend of a friend saw me parking my F-150 in front of my new place. Maybe some mutual acquaintance spotted me and decided it was juicy enough gossip to spread. However it happened, she found out, and she wasn't the type to let something like this slide. The first message hit my phone in the middle of the afternoon. Just a simple text, dripping with sarcasm. "Since when do guys who clean sewers get paid like CEOs? Or, did you actually find treasure down there? If so, I want my cut." I let out a laugh. Classic Jenny. Assuming that if I had money, it had to be because I either stumbled into it or didn't deserve it. Not a single thought in her head that maybe, just maybe, I had figured out something on my own. I stared at the message for a minute, debating if I should even respond. I could ignore it, pretend I never saw it. But that wouldn't be any fun, would it? So I texted back. "Found a treasure chest in a porta potty. You wouldn't believe what people flush." The 3 little dots popped up, then disappeared, then popped up again. She was trying to figure out if I was messing with her. Then the calls started. First one, ignored. Second one, ignored. Third one, she was persistent. I'd give her that. On the 4th call, I sighed, picked up, and braced myself. "All right, what's up?" She didn't waste time. "Are you serious? Where did you get the money?" I could practically hear the gears turning in her head, trying to do the math, trying to figure out what she had missed. "I told you. Treasure chest. Public restroom. You wouldn't believe it." Silence. Then an exasperated sigh. "Be serious, Alex. I know you didn't win the lottery, and I know you're not running some secret business empire. So where did it come from?" I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Guess you should have been nicer to me. Maybe I would have cut you in. She scoffed. "You're not serious." I grinned. "Believe what you want." Then I hung up. The thing about Jenny, she couldn't stand being left out of anything, especially when money was involved. And now she was losing her mind, knowing I had something she didn't. And I knew exactly what was coming next. Not even an hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Jenny. "Mom." I let it ring out. Then came the text. "We need to talk. Call me." "No, how are you?" "No, hope you're doing well." just straight to business. Classic. I put my phone down, stretched out on my couch, and smiled to myself. They had spent years making sure I knew exactly where I stood in the family. Now, for the first time, they were the ones waiting on me, and I wasn't in a hurry to call back. I knew it was coming. The second Jenny found out, the second my mom sent that, "We need to talk" text, it was only a matter of time before they showed up. And sure enough, a few days later, there they were. I heard the knock while I was in the kitchen, making a sandwich. It wasn't the polite kind of knock. It was the "we know you're in there" kind, the impatient, heavy-handed banging that made it clear they weren't going away until I opened the door. I sighed, took a bite of my sandwich, because I wasn't about to deal with this on an empty stomach. And when I opened the door, there they stood, my parents, arms crossed, expressions a mix of fake concern and barely concealed frustration. Jenny was behind them, scrolling on her phone like she was already crafting her next viral post about me. "Nice place," my dad said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Mom followed, looking around with narrowed eyes, like she was inspecting a hotel room she was about to leave a bad review for. Jenny barely glanced up, still glued to her screen. "So," Dad said, turning to face me, "how about you tell us where all this money came from?" I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, playing it cool. "What money?" Mom let out a sharp laugh. "Don't play dumb. We know you didn't suddenly start making six figures digging ditches." Jenny finally looked up. "Did you really find treasure? Because if you did, that's technically family money." I almost choked on my sandwich. "Family money?" She nodded, completely serious. "You wouldn't have even been working that job if it weren't for Mom and Dad raising you. Technically, everything you have is because of them. So, yeah, you owe them. You owe all of us." Mom clasped her hands together, putting on her best reasonable voice. "We're not saying you have to give us everything. Honey, just our fair share. You wouldn't even exist without us." Dad nodded. "Exactly. You owe us for 18 years of food, shelter, education." "Education?" I cut in. "You mean the education I paid for myself while working 2 jobs because you said college was a waste of money?" Dad's jaw tightened. "That's not the point. The point is we're family, and family takes care of each other." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "Oh, now we're family? Funny. I don't remember you saying that when I was barely scraping by." Jenny rolled her eyes. "Oh my God, Alex, stop being so dramatic. You've got more money than you'll ever need. Just cut us in and stop acting like you're better than us." I set my sandwich down and took a step closer. "Let me make this really simple for you. I don't owe you anything. Not a cent." Mom's face twisted into something ugly. "You ungrateful little." Dad held up a hand to stop her, but I could see the anger in his eyes, too. "You really want to do this, son? You want to turn your back on your own blood?" "I didn't turn my back on anyone." "You did, years ago." Jenny scoffed. "Wow, you really think you're some kind of success story now, don't you? Newsflash, you're still just a loser brother who lucked into something good." I could feel my patience wearing thin. "You should leave. Now." Mom shook her head. "We're not leaving until you do the right thing." Dad took a step forward, try and make himself look bigger, like that intimidation tactic had ever worked on me. "You really want to make this ugly? Because we can." I pulled out my phone and started dialing. "All right, then, let's get someone here to help you leave." The second they realized I was calling the police, the mood shifted. Jenny muttered something under her breath and backed toward the door. Mom's face went pale. Dad clenched his fists, then exhaled sharply. "This isn't over," he muttered, shoving past me toward the exit. "You think you can just shut us out? Family doesn't work that way." Mom shot me a glare as she followed him out. Jenny lingered for a second, eyes flicking between me and my phone, like she was debating whether to say something snarky or just cut her losses. She cut her losses. The door slammed behind them. I let out a slow breath, then locked it. I knew they'd be back. People like that never just walk away when there's money involved. But next time, I'd be ready. Just as I sat back down, my phone buzzed. Another message from Jenny. You think this is over? You'll regret this. I shook my head, put my phone on silent, and picked up my sandwich again. They could threaten all they wanted. I wasn't losing sleep over it. After the whole mess with my family, I knew one thing for sure. If I wanted peace, I had to put some serious distance between me and them. So I packed up and left. Not just to another city, another state, far enough that I wouldn't have to worry about running into them at the grocery store or hearing about their latest "Alex is such a disappointment" speech from mutual acquaintances. I found a place that felt right. A small town, but not too small. Friendly people, good weather, and, most importantly, a fresh start. I bought a house, not a mansion, not some ridiculous estate with 10 bathrooms, just a solid, comfortable home with a big porch and a backyard perfect for grilling. The kind of place where you wake up, sip coffee in the morning sun, and actually feel at peace. And then I got to work on something new. I'd spent years busting my back doing physical labor, watching people with money treat guys like me as if we were invisible. I wanted to do something different, something where I could be my own boss, where I wasn't answering to some guy barking orders while sitting in an air-conditioned office. So I opened a coffee shop. Well, not just any coffee shop. A whole brand, actually, Silver Dollar Coffee. Yeah, maybe a little on the nose considering how I got here, but hey, it had a nice ring to it. I figured if that one silver dollar could change my life, maybe this was my way of honoring it. I hired good people, folks who had been stuck in dead-end jobs like I had, people who needed a shot. The shop took off faster than I expected. Turns out, people really like coffee. Who knew? Within a year, I had 2 locations, then 3, then 5. Life was good. For the first time ever, I wasn't worried about making rent, dodging late fees, or rationing meals until payday. I was living life on my own terms, and it felt incredible. Of course, my family didn't see it that way. Even after I moved, even after I made it clear I wanted nothing to do with them, they still tried. Calls, texts, emails, even a couple of guilt-trippy, "We just want to talk" letters. Blocked every single one of them. Jenny, though, she was the most persistent. Every few weeks, she'd find some way to message me. A new number, a fake account. She was determined. The messages were always the same mix of fake concern and barely disguised resentment. You can't just cut off family. Mom and Dad aren't getting any younger. Wow, big-time businessman now, huh? Guess money really does change people. I never responded. Never even opened them. The last time she tried, I was sitting on my porch, sipping coffee from a mug with my own damn logo on it, watching the sun set over my backyard. My phone buzzed. Another message. Another desperate attempt to drag me back into their nonsense. I didn't even look at it. Just silenced the notification, leaned back in my chair, and smiled. For the first time in my life, I had exactly what I wanted. Freedom. And the best part? They couldn't do a thing about it.